Welcome to the podcast Beyond the Ballot, a Lone Wolf production. This is where we showcase local politics by providing a platform for candidates and elected officials. Today's episode is sponsored by Image Salon in Putnam Valley. Image Salon specializes in all phases of hair from 1-year-old to 100 years old. Visit their Facebook page and Instagram account to witness their stunning work. Schedule an appointment by calling 845-528-4870. I'm proud to introduce today's guest, Stephanie Waters. She's a Republican candidate running for Putnam Valley Town Supervisor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So let's start talking about your personal background. How long have you lived in Putnam Valley, and what do you think makes this area so special?
I've been living. I grew up on Sherwood Road, which is technically Cortland Manor, just to be clear, but right on the border of Putnam Valley and Cortland Manor. And I went to Putnam Valley schools. My dad bought a house in 1972, and that's where I grew up. I went to the Putnam Valley schools. At that time, we just had a elementary school and a middle school, and I've been there ever since. I did at some point move out for about 10 years and came back to Putnam Valley to raise my family.
Okay. And how many children do you have?
I have 3 kids. I have twin daughters. They'll be 23 this year, and I have a son who just graduated high school. He'll be 18 this year.
Wow. So
late,
busy.
we all have late birthdays.
So what do you do professionally, and has anything from your past prepared you for the role as a town supervisor?
Currently I work for a real estate investment company. We have shopping centers, about 18 to 20 strip malls. I work as an associate for them. I've been there for about 18 years. I started working for them one day a week. It was when the economy crashed. My husband and I were in between, building a house and owning a home and trying to figure all that stuff out when George Bush came on the air and said the world's coming to an end. And I said, I need to go back to work. So I started working for them one day a week, and the position evolved into me working just under, I probably work about 35 hours a week. I'm an associate. I do all sorts of accounting responsibilities, reconciliation, financial statements, budgeting. I also take care of the investors that invest in our properties. I do a little property management when appropriate, when needed. It's a kind of fill-in situation.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
So in your life, have you had any specific mentors or role models?
Wow. I've had a lot. I have to say I've been very fortunate in that area. I grew up on a dead-end street, where there were a ton of families, and a lot of those parents were amazing to us, all of us, not just me. And, whenever a family needed something, we rallied. It was a great place to grow up. It's great memories, especially looking back now, raising my children and my children now kind of like, leaving the nest, so to speak, reflecting back. Those neighbors on Sherwood Road were pretty amazing, and they were super supportive. They gave us a lot of love. They gave us a safe place to grow up.
So like a second family.
Extremely grateful for that experience on Sherwood Road.
That's great.
Yeah. And then, of course, as a young adult, there were friends and their parents always kind of, they liked me and they took care of me. And, when my heart was broken, there was always somebody there to give me a hug. And I was very fortunate in that area. Thank you for asking.
Do you want to get into, what do you mean when you say your heart was broken?
Well, I lost my dad when I was 18. My father died at 42 of lung cancer. This year will be 40 years ago that he passed away. And to be honest with you, I don't really talk about it. I feel like it's something that I think about more now that I'm running for town supervisor in the town that I grew up in. I think about how painful that time was, but for some reason I wasn't allowed to feel that pain. I had a younger brother that, was still in high school and preparing to go to college. And I had a mom my mom's Japanese, so she didn't have the greatest command of the English language or understanding how to do, like even reconciling a checkbook. And there were things that just needed to be done, and I just kind of stepped up to the plate. So the point is, my grieving had to be put aside. And I don't think I really grieved until I was in my 20s. And so when I talk about some of my friends at that time and their parents stepping up, I don't know if they knew I was really heartbroken, but they knew something was wrong, and they would always give me just kind of support and love. And it was great. I had a great support system as I was growing up.
That's really tough.
Yeah.
It could be very traumatic, losing a parent, being young. And at that point, you either have to sink or swim. And I commend you that you just had to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I remember being on Route 6 and saying to myself, I was probably, it was maybe 3 or 4 years after he passed away, and I was just like driving. I didn't know what to do, and I just couldn't settle. And I just said to myself, I can't let my dad down. I have to rise above, and I have to find the strength to carry on, and that's what I did.
It's really tough.
Yeah,
I completely understand.
Yeah.
A similar situation for me. Just for fun, let's just pivot to
absolutely.
fun.
Let's pivot. I'm getting emotional. Let's pivot.
What is there something that people might not know about you? Something interesting that you'd like to share?
I guess I'm the one thing that most people probably don't know about me is that I ran the New York City Marathon.
Really? Wow.
So
so you're very disciplined. You're a very disciplined person.
Well, it was funny because a good friend of mine, at the time I met her, I was going to Westchester Community College and she was going to Pace, and we taught I taught aerobics. Most people probably don't know that. So we were working at a fitness center in White Plains. We were teaching aerobic classes, and I don't remember how the conversation came up, but she's like, Steph, you got to just pick a thing and just stay focused and get it done. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to run the New York City Marathon. So literally, I was
straight out of the gate. No other marathons before then.
Right. I didn't even run. I was teaching aerobics, so I had cardio, fitness, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to run the marathon. So I researched it. I researched how to train. So I did the training. I only ran 2 races. I ran a 10K in Peekskill, and then I ran a half a marathon. And I don't remember maybe it was in July or August. And then I got the so this was back in '91.
I was going to ask you
right,
when.
Right, so it was quite a ways back, but you had to fill out this form. There was no internet then. You had to mail the stuff in. So anyway, I got a letter in the mail saying I didn't get in. And you're going to be put on the waiting list. And so I was like, that's it. It's over. So I still trained, but I didn't really train. And then a few weeks later, I got the letter saying I made it through the lottery.
Wow.
And then so it was the middle of September. And I had given up, right? Even though I didn't give up. And I had to get back into training. And I remember being on the bus. There was a bus that I took from Peekskill, if I remember, that took me to the start line of the New York City Marathon. And everybody had all these, diets they were following.
Oh
and
my God.
I was wearing new socks, and this guy's like, nobody should be wearing new socks. I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to finish the marathon. I'm wearing new socks.
So how'd you do?
I finished half. I think it took me 4 hours and 19 minutes or something. It took me
That's still amazing.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
I mean, you see the elliptical to the side of us. I never used that. So
so now I don't know. I continue running. I love running, but I haven't ran a marathon since.
Well, you have a lot going on right now, So has there been anything specifically that has prompted you to pursue this candidacy? And you are primarying a fellow Republican.
Yes.
And that hasn't happened in about 40 years. Yeah, surprisingly.
Decades. Yeah, it's cool,
Wow.
right? So honestly, I don't remember exactly the dates. This because it all kind of just happened, if you will. But it was definitely like, I don't know, August or September, maybe even October of last year. A couple of community members came up to me and they walked up to me and they're like, would you consider running for town supervisor? We think we need new blood. And I'm like, yeah. Like I kind of laughed it off, right? And they're like, no, we're serious. So I slept on it for, a little while. And then they came up to me again, like, what do you think? And I'm like, you know what? I'll do it. And so I did it. I did
Again,
it. I did it.
between the marathon and now this.
So it's been an interesting journey. The best part about the journey that I've loved so far is just talking to the community members. I've reached out to a lot of, because I grew up here, I reached out to some of the members that I grew up with, the people that still live here. Some of the neighbors that I lived on Sherwood Road with have moved further into Putnam Valley and got reconnected with those people who I haven't seen in so long. So reached out to friends, and then that just kind of branched out to meeting people that I've never met before, and it was really interesting experience to talk to.
That's nice,
to the
engaging
community.
with the community.
It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was the best part so far.
So you can say, but are there any particular criticisms or feedback or an assessment that you've done of the current leadership that the board is right now?
I mean, I guess I don't really listen. I don't know. I mean, I don't have any criticism. I think that anybody who puts themselves out there and you don't. I believe in Putnam Valley. We're a small community. It's work. It's something that you must care about, right? I'm sure. So I don't have any real criticisms personally towards the people who are in our government office right now. There's just things that I don't agree with, but it's not criticism.
Okay. All right. So if you're elected as town supervisor, what would be your main areas of focus, and what would you like to accomplish for the town of Putnam Valley?
I think the main focus for me as a longtime resident and a current resident and someone who's raised their kids there, one of the things I think about, I mean, I purposely came back to Putnam Valley to raise my family here, right? It was like, let's go to Putnam Valley.
Because you had such a wonderful experience.
It's quiet, it's private. There's a lot of reasons. I love the lake. There's a lot of hiking. Love the wilderness, the wildlife. It's private. I feel like it's a community where you get to be who you want, and just everybody leaves you alone, so to speak. So so we chose Putnam Valley, and when I think about now that my kids are growing up and moving on, I think about, will they choose to come back to Putnam Valley? I mean, the odds of maybe one of my children wanting to start their family in Putnam Valley is something realistic. And I look at Putnam Valley now, and at the time it was affordable, and I feel like it's getting more and more expensive and less affordable. And it's something that I want to do something about.
No, I definitely agree. It's definitely, we have this issue, right, with between the younger generation being able to afford to stay in this area and start a family. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, the older folks. It's hard to be retired here and to remain a resident here under a limited income, So it's definitely an issue that we're facing.
And I feel like in Putnam Valley, it's very multi-generational. I mean, there's a lot of kids that I went through, a lot of people that live in Putnam Valley that I went to school with, kindergarten through 12th grade, and they're all facing the same thoughts, like, what do they do next?
Right.
And a lot of the parents that are my age have kids the same age as my kids. It's like, where do you tell your kids to go?
Right.
Right? Do you think about setting them up someplace else because it's easier living?
Or some people wait for their kids to graduate from high school, and then they finally do move away from New York.
Right.
I've seen that.
Right. But my point is, like, Putnam Valley is such a beautiful place. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to just leave there because I can't afford it anymore. It's
sad.
It's sad.
It is sad.
I mean, I've been here since 1972.
Wow. I just want to take a moment to kindly thank our sponsor again, Image Salon in Putnam Valley. Image Salon specializes in all phases of hair from 1-year-old to 100 years old. Visit their Facebook page and Instagram account to witness their stunning work. Schedule an appointment by calling 845-528-4870. Okay, so what would you say are the 2 to 3 biggest issues people that live in Putnam Valley that they're facing? We did talk about just briefly just now about how it is quite expensive to reside in Putnam Valley, if not New York State. And how would you plan on addressing these issues?
Well, I think one of the things that I'd like to see is there's 11,000 and change people living in Putnam Valley. It's not a ton of people. The reason why we live in Putnam Valley is because we love it. That's our common denominator. How do we come together? How do we relate to each other? I feel like we're a divided community. I'd like to see our local government honor our taxpayers. I feel like our taxpayers fear our local government. Like, people are worried about putting my sign on their property because they have open permits they're trying to get.
Right.
Like, that doesn't make sense to me in our small little town. Like, why can't we just? It's okay if you don't agree with the current administration, right? If you shouldn't be worried about putting my sign on your lawn.
At the end of the day, everyone wants it just to be a better community.
A better community. I mean, I feel like that's the one thing I could do is bring us together, understand that we all have different points of view, but we care about the community that we live in. The other thing is, excuse me, I'd like to see, we have about 20 families in Putnam Valley that have contaminated water. They're told by the DEC they can only take 2-minute showers, no baths, and brush your teeth with bottled water. It's a concern for me.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine if you had to tell your daughter that she can't brush her teeth? She has to use bottled water. I mean, how many times is she going to really do it? Number one.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's really scary, though. Because
Yeah.
you just don't know what the long-term effects could be.
Right.
And
I'm going to be honest with you. I've been doing this for a few months. I'm trying to talk to anybody and everybody who will talk to me about this topic. But at the end of the day, it's information. What are we doing about it? And are we communicating with those 20 families about it? Let's not talk to them and say, yeah, we got it, and don't talk to them for 3 months or 4 months. And they feel like they're forgotten and they're not heard and they're not seen.
Okay. So a consistent dialogue.
Yeah.
So if you are elected and, maybe, when you're on the board, people might not see eye to eye. How do you plan on collaborating with other board members?
Well, this goes back to connection. This goes back to finding the common denominator. We all want the same things. We all want a healthy community. We all want to have a safe community. And we start there. Okay, we disagree. Maybe we disagree, but let's find a compromise. Let's figure out how do we solve the problem instead of arguing about, who's right and who's wrong. Let's just solve a problem. Put the problem on the table and let's solve it.
Another question I have is the current leadership was able to secure funding for the Putnam Valley through sales tax sharing. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that here's another thought to go back to the contaminated water. Let's use that money to help these families that have contaminated water. Do they need a new water filtering system? I don't know. This is something that I feel is really important to our community as a whole, because as easily as it happened to those 20 families, it could happen to 20 families someplace else in Putnam Valley. Let's use the money that we're getting from the sales tax to help our entire community.
And, like you said, to have a consistent dialogue. Another word that could be used is transparency, which is a huge buzzword for campaigns.
Yeah.
I would assume that you'd feel that when you're elected, you would guarantee operating with full transparency. How would you go about doing that?
I would do my best. I mean, one of the things that drive me crazy is when you look at some of these meetings online. I appreciate them being online, but everybody's like, yeah. Okay, why are we always agreeing on everything? So
you'd like to see more of a conversation.
I'd like to see more of a conversation. I'd like some more community input. I'd like
it's open to public comment.
I'd like to get the community more involved in lots of things as a whole, not just in one segment of our town.
Okay.
I think I'd like to see I'd like to do a project with the science club. I think that one of the ideas I have is doing some sort of recycling transfer station in Putnam Valley. I'm not saying it's the answer. I'm saying it's an idea. Let's take the idea. Let's give it to the science club in Putnam Valley. Let those kids research it. Let them research it for a year or 2 or 5, right? And then bring it back to the community and say, listen, this can work or this can't work, or we could make money doing this, or we
give
can't
them some sort of incentive.
But it just gives it makes the children in the school aware of what's going on in the town. It gives them input
and responsibility.
Right, some responsibility. I think just getting the kids more involved in the things that go into the town would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it sounds great.
It's an idea.
Yeah, no, it's a nice idea.
I also
to take ownership, have the kids take ownership.
Right, and I also think that one of the issues in our town, from what I understand, is that we need more volunteers for the fire department. Let's do something with the kids. I mean, not everybody plays sports. Not everybody, is on like do clubs. Some kids go home and
they're just
they're
on their
not involved
iPads.
Maybe they'd like to volunteer at the fire department. Give them incentive. Have a scholarship program if they do a certain amount of years every year. Just to kind of expose us to different things, right? It doesn't have to be Girl Scouts. It doesn't have to be Boy Scouts. It doesn't have to be softball or soccer. It could, maybe even the ambulance corps. Maybe even have these kids work at the town and do some filing and
some exposure.
Some exposure and just get people involved. We're a small town. Let's get involved. Let's keep connected. Let's be connected.
Right.
Connection.
Yeah. Connection. That's the message.
Connection. Let's connect.
We just spoke about the water contamination, and in this past over a year now, the Mayapack Somers residents opposed a proposal for a lithium battery facility, and the town supervisor of Carmel submitted Michael Kazari submitted a letter to Pam Bondi, who is the Attorney General, and in the letter he writes about requesting support in defending the constitutional right of home rule in regard to land use and zoning authority. Is this something you would consider doing? How do you plan on preserving local control and decision-making that serves the best interest of the taxpayer?
Wow.
I know, that's a loaded question, I know. But, it's an important one. There's the thought that, we know best, right? Why should these mandates, these unfunded mandates, or these projects come down from the state and tell us what to do, within our town? If you don't have local control, you have nothing, right? So I'm just wondering, I would assume that you support that notion, that local control. I mean, because you would be, if you're elected, you're the town supervisor, right?
I 100% agree with local control, and even more in Putnam Valley because we're a small town. We don't have big businesses, right? Everything funded in Putnam Valley comes through the taxpayer. We only have about 4,300 homes in Putnam Valley. That's where we get all our money, besides what we get from state aid. So I think it's really important for us to have input on what is happening in
and the
our
needs
town.
of Putnam Valley may be different from other towns, right?
I mean, I think it's great that we've got grants for electrical charging stations for cars in Putnam Valley. I'm not disagreeing with that, but is that where the community wants us to put our energy? I've been living in Putnam Valley since 1972. I've never parked anywhere for an hour. Never.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe never is the wrong word.
Right.
I've been to the lawyer's office a few times. Maybe I was there for 45 minutes, but I wouldn't go there to charge my car. It's not a destination. Image Salon, my sponsor, maybe I'm there for 40 minutes, but I'm not going there to charge and I'm not against electrical charging stations. But I also know they're an amenity, and it's not where I think we should spend our energy.
Right. So before we conclude this episode, are there any other campaign talking points that you'd like to discuss?
I mean, I have so many things on my mind, to be honest with you, and this has all kind of happened so quick. And
like a whirlwind.
It's been a whirlwind. And I'm sure when I get in my car and I leave here, and we're like, oh, I didn't talk about this, and I didn't talk about that, and I didn't talk about this. Again, it goes back to grassroots. I mean, I feel like the people in Putnam Valley feel that they haven't been heard in a long time. Everybody wants a healthy school district. They want a healthy town. They want healthy lakes. They want to have, good parking, safety, all these things. But everything comes with a cost. So where do we put our energy? That's one of the things, my big thing. Like, where do we put our energy? Where do you want me to, as the town, where does the town want to put my energy? I mean, one of the things that I've heard through getting the signatures is we have a population of young adults who can't drive due to some sort of disability.
Really?
And, these families are looking for some sort of public transportation. Now, I know that it's been addressed, but again, the community, that population feels like it's just been dropped. Like, it was addressed, yeah, it's a good idea, let's look into it, but then it gets dropped and nobody follows through. Same thing with the contaminated water. Yes, there's been talk. Yes, they get bottled water. Yes, the DEC told them there's the 3 things that they can or can't do, but that's it. It gets dropped. And then we're moving on to electrical charging stations by way of example. I'm not criticizing. I'm just using it as an example. So I want to address the things that are...
You just want to follow through.
I want to follow through. I want the community to feel heard. I want things to make sense. I want 2 + 2 = 4. I don't have a silver bullet. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to be able to fix every single thing. But let's put our problems on the table and let's fix them.
That's a great message.
My goal. And connection.
Yeah.
Connection. Let's be connected.
So this is crunch time because Tuesday is the primary election. I think today might be the last day for early voting.
Yeah.
So where can people go? Where is your website that people can visit and read more about your campaign?
Well, so here's the that's very interesting. This job doesn't pay a ton of money, which is fine, right? So I'm not going to spend a ton of money to get elected because I'm not going to tell my community I'm going to be financially responsible if I'm not financially responsible for myself. So I don't have a website. I am on Facebook. I tried to create a Facebook campaign page, which has been a nightmare for me because for some reason I can't get past every little thing that they've asked me to do. So find me on Facebook or, come to my house.
That's definitely the epitome of grassroots.
I'm doing the best I can with what I got.
So the date of the primary election we said is June 24th, which is Tuesday. Where do people go to vote?
Ambulance Corps. I believe it's from 6 in the morning till 9 at night.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
I'm really excited and I'm really grateful. It's been exciting.
Definitely an exciting experience.
Yeah. I'm like I tell my kids all the time, you got to be the man in the arena. I'm definitely the man in the arena.
So there you have it, folks. Stephanie Waters, candidate for town supervisor for Putnam Valley.
Yes.
It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was awesome.
So, if anyone, a small business owner or individual would like to sponsor our podcast, please contact us for details. Thank you for watching the podcast Beyond the Ballot. Like, subscribe, and leave us your comments or any questions you might have for future guests. Thank you.
Thank you.